Please welcome to the stage Xinyi Zhao and Joey Freund.
All right, hope everybody's having fun on the last day of Unite. My name is Xinyi, this is Joey. Today we're going to look into all the places that merchants discover and install apps on Shopify, and how Shopify is investing in search and recommendations across the platform. So the main purpose of app discovery is really to make sure that both merchants and partners are successful by matching supply and demand. And now let's take a closer look at how and where Shopify facilitates this matching process. So one of the most prominent ways for a merchant to discover apps is through the Shopify App Store search. It's a highly trusted surface that signals strong intentions from our merchants. Merchants often have problems or specific solutions in mind already, hence search is a very effective way to find apps quickly. Another active channel to look for apps is the App Store homepage, which is a high traffic surface since this is the first touch point for merchants looking for apps. Merchants can easily browse a variety of personalized and static collections right on the homepage. And when merchants are launching and managing their apps inside of Shopify admin, we also recommend relevant apps that are complementary to their existing apps right inside of the app index. And finally, we have been experimenting with email, which is a highly proactive marketing channel to bring useful recommendations to merchants who might be less aware of the benefits of apps. So from what we showed so far, there are essentially two main discovery techniques: search and recommendations. And next, we're going to dive deeper into each discovery technique. And having said that, I'm going to pass this to Joey, who's going to talk to you about search.
Awesome. Thank you, Xinyi. So before we jump into the details of search, let's talk about the impact within our ecosystem. On an average month, we see roughly 2.4 million searches. These result in 1.3 million page views and almost 700,000 installs. Now, the goal of search is to provide the most relevant results to all people across all of their searches. Now, the statement may seem kind of simple and obvious, but it actually highlights some of the intrinsic complexities and subtleties of search. I mean, first of all, relevance is a qualitative, subjective term. Then there's the fact that different people consider different things to be relevant. And finally, different searches are very different in nature. So for example, searching for a specific brand is very different than searching for a general concept. Now, okay, so search is complex, fine, but how do we handle this? Well, our team actually applies a scientific method. What we do is we make things measurable. We then run experiments and observe the results, and we make incremental improvements. Now, in the next few slides, what we want to do is we want to give you an insight into our development process and share some of the subtleties we ran into. So one example, we start actually before examples, let's talk about measuring things. So when we want to make relevance measurable, we can use standard metrics, such as precision and recall. Now, this is not a math lecture, so I'm not going to dive into any formal definitions, but I do want to mention what these metrics are used for. Precision is about minimizing false positives. That is, we want to make sure that only relevant apps are found. Now, recall, on the other hand, is about minimizing false negatives. It's about making sure that all relevant apps are found. Now, when we tune our search engine, we want to make sure to improve both. But sometimes there is a trade-off between them, and this is what I want to get into. Let's see some examples. Inflections. So for a search engine, review, reviews, and reviewing, they appear as three different words. A search engine doesn't know they refer to the same concept, and searching for one will not match any of the others. So that can cause some relevant matches to be missed. In this case, there is a standard solution for that. It's called stemming. Stemming is the process of reducing different inflections to a single root. So here are a few examples. The word orders would be reduced to order, reviewing to review, and successful or successfully will be reduced to success. Now, that will allow us to match all relevant apps. Yet, now, stemming is a standard technique. It works very well for English, as well as many other languages. but as we can see, it can also lead to unexpected results. Here's an example. One of the apps on the Shopify App Store is called Printful. Now, if we apply stemming naively, the brand name Printful will get reduced to the word print, and merchants searching specifically for the Printful app might find less relevant print-related apps at the top of their search results. In other words, what we see here is that we use stemming to improve overall recall, but it can actually result in reducing the precision for a specific term. And the solution here is to use both stemmed and non-stemmed versions of the word, and we continuously tune the search engine to find exactly the right balance between overall recall and precision for as many terms as we can. Let's see another example for where we can improve recall. Typos. When a merchant makes a typo in their search, we still want to make sure to show them what they were looking for. Now, there is a standard technique for that. It's called fuzzy matching. Now, fuzzy matching is about searching for words that are similar to the search query, but not necessarily identical. It works great, but with higher recall comes lower precision. So here's an example. Consider the terms shipping and shopping. So both are very common in our ecosystem. They're different semantically, but almost identical in terms of their spelling. And just to make things worse, the only difference between them, the letters I and O, appear right next to each other on the keyboard. Now, when searching for shopping, shipping-related apps might not be so relevant, but they will be captured by fuzzy matching. And this becomes even more of an issue when you sort search results, let's say by popularity or recency. In these cases, irrelevant fuzzy matches can outrank relevant results. Now, once again, the solution is tuning the search engine. We give fuzzy matches a low weight, and we tune the search engine to effectively cause fuzzy matching to kick in only when exact matches are not found. Okay, so we saw two examples where we improved on recall. That is, we wanted to make sure that all relevant apps are found. Let's see an example where we talk about improving precision, making sure that only relevant apps are found. Searching for a phrase like email marketing is very different than searching for email or marketing on their own. And the common technique to improve precision in this case is to use phrase matching. That is, match on a full phrase, not on individual words. But as you can see, there's always a trade-off. So the precision we gain from phrase matching can actually lead to lower recall. So here's one example. The phrases order tracking and tracking orders, although semantically the same, they're different phrases. And searches for one will miss the other. And in this case, actually, fuzzy matching ends up providing us with a safety net, because fuzzy matching is a high recall matcher, and it does match on individual words. So that allows us to ensure that relevant apps are not missed. All right, so we've seen a few examples, and all of these talked about recall and precision. So they were focused on lookup, that is, making sure that all relevant apps and only relevant apps are found. But lookup is not the end of the story. It's not enough to just find the most relevant set of results. We also want to make sure we rank them from most to least relevant. In practice, this means that for every matching app, we compute a ranking score. Now, the ranking function that computes the score uses multiple inputs. First of all, the contents of your app listing. Then, in addition to that, there is metadata, such as installation history, review history, as well as a carefully curated set of search tags. Now, the initial score is determined during the lookup stage. It's based on which fields of your listing are matched. Then, that initial score is adjusted based on metadata. We have a little example here. It's only made for illustration purposes. So it's based on these three matches, three fields, you select the best of them and you multiply based on the number of installs. So our actual function is actually slightly more involved. It has more inputs, but the idea is exactly the same. All right, before we wrap up the discussion around search, just want to mention a few recent improvements we've made. We recently built an internal system that allows us to ensure that improvements in one area do not lead to unexpected results in another. So before we make any change to our search ranking algorithm, we run thousands of searches, we analyze the relevance of the results, and we make sure that we choose the right trade-offs. We've also been evolving our ability to run A/B testing. So we've been experimenting with multiple ranking algorithms and analyzing their impact on merchants. And finally, using these tools, we recently released a new search ranking algorithm that provides more relevant and more stable results. And with that, I would like to pass it on to Shini to let you know about our recommendation engine.
Great, awesome. Thank you, Joey. All right, let's take a look at how apps are recommended across Shopify. So we have been investing and experimenting with app recommendations for a while now in order to match merchants with the right apps and also increase app installation rate across the board. Our results have shown that recommended app listings are viewed 320,000 times a month, which lead to 127,000 installs. So why do we invest in recommendations? Our partners build many different products and features to empower merchants throughout their commerce journey. However, with the diversity of our merchant needs and the variety of the functionalities our partners provide, it becomes quite challenging for our merchants to actually filter out what's relevant for them. We provide the most relevant recommendations to all merchants across Shopify. And given the uniqueness of each one of our merchants, having the right recommendation at the right place makes a huge difference in growing their businesses. So let's walk through how app recommendations work on a high level. Quite simply, our recommendation system takes in characteristics of merchant information, such as industry, sales volume, plan type, location, app installation data, etc. We then feed these information into a series of machine learning algorithms to generate different sets of app recommendations for different purposes. The main technique we use to generate the baseline list is called collaborative filtering. Collaborative filtering is a very common recommendation algorithm used in the industry. So for example, if you're a Netflix user, I'm sure most of you probably are, all the personalized content that are surfaced on the homepage are generated using this technique. And Yelp also uses similar technique to generate restaurant recommendations for their users. Like many machine learning techniques, collaborative filtering makes predictions based on users' historical behaviors. Specifically, it is to predict users' preference for a set of items based on past interactions. So in Shopify's context, users are merchants, items are apps. And now let's go through a few examples of how app recommendations we suggest. When authenticated users log into the App Store, they will be able to see a personalized collection called Recommended for You right on the homepage. Recommended for You leverages one of the collaborative filtering techniques to generate a list of apps that are used by merchants similar to the target merchant. This particular collection is one of the highest converting collection on the App Store homepage, showing that merchants find them highly relevant. Let's take a look under the hood to see how these recommendations are generated. This particular technique finds merchants that are similar to the target merchant based on a set of attributes, and then recommend apps that are interacted by those similar merchants. So here's a very simple example. Our merchants, Alice and Bob, they both sell leather sneakers in North America. They have been on Shopify for over a year now, and they both have installed similar apps in the past to help with their businesses. So we recently realized Alice installed Return Magic to help her handle returns easily for her buyers. And since Alice and Bob are very similar type of merchants that share a similar set of characteristics, we then also recommend Return Magic to Bob. That was pretty simple. So let's take a look at another example. Given that the apps section inside of admin is the home for apps, we also surface useful recommendations to our merchants leveraging this surface. We recently launched recommendation set generated by finding apps that are complementary to the one that target merchant has recently installed. Since the launch of the surface, we have observed that this recommendation set converts at a very high rate of over 40%. And here's how it works under the hood. This particular technique finds all the complementary apps to the ones that the target merchant has interacted already, and then recommend these similar apps to the merchant. So in this case, our merchant Alice recently installed the app ShipStation to help her manage her shipping efforts. ShipStation is often installed together with Returnly by other merchants that are really similar to Alice. Hence, we consider Returnly to be relevant to Alice as well, and then we recommend this app. And finally, we surface a recommendation card on the admin home called Recommended for You based on blogs you've read. Our merchants interact with different types of Shopify content every day, and these interactions can be really valuable for us to understand what the merchants are currently interested in. So in this case, we take a look at all the blogs that merchants have viewed recently, because this particular data is highly contextual, that infers merchant interest at a given moment. And based on this data, we recommend the relevant apps to the merchants. How it works under the hood is actually quite simple. So we predict a set of apps that are useful for the user, and then we leverage additional data to re-rank the output to give more contextual set of recommendations. And let's go back to our merchant Alice. So based on our understanding of Alice, we have predicted a list of app recommendations that are relevant to her businesses, which is called Recommended for You, which we covered earlier in the talk. Recently, Alice read a blog post on upselling and bundling products, and our system picked this up as a signal of interest. And then we use this information to re-rank the existing list of recommendations. As a result of the re-ranking process, we promote the Frequently Bought Together app, which its main purpose is upselling and bundling, to give her the contextual and relevant recommendations at this time. At Shopify, we continuously make improvements to our recommendation system to ensure that up-to-date and relevant apps are surfaced to our merchants. So recently, we have incorporated partner install requirements to make sure that merchants are only recommended apps that work for them 100% of the time. We've also incorporated quality filtering based on reviews. And now only apps with over 3-star rating will be recommended to our merchants. And then finally, our recommendation system soon will be location aware, meaning that apps that work for specific regions will be recommended to merchants in those corresponding regions.
Thank you, Shini. Okay, so let's take a breather and see what have we talked about. So we talked about search, and we look at the trade-offs that come into play as we tune and tweak our search algorithm. We also saw a few techniques that we use to generate recommendations and the places where we show them to our merchants. At this point, you're probably wondering, okay, that's great, but how can I use this information to grow my app within the ecosystem? So here are a few things we can do. Based on what we've seen today, these are the few things you can do to help us make your app discoverable. First of all, your listing. Your listing is an input to both the search and recommendation algorithms. And an accurate listing helps us show your apps to the most relevant merchants. For example, if your app solves a unique problem, make sure to accurately describe it in the tagline or the key benefits of your listing. This way, when a merchant searches for a solution for that specific problem, your app will appear higher in the ranking. I mean, this is due to the fact that we constantly improve the precision of our algorithm. Another example is to keep accurate install requirements. Install requirements are another input that is being taken into account when we generate recommendations. So with install requirements, we can actually show your application to the most relevant merchants. Now, your listing is not the only input that goes into these algorithms. As we said, there's additional metadata. So maintaining positive reviews and providing high-quality support helps us understand how merchants experience your app. We then use these as signals of quality, and we leverage them to organically promote high-quality apps. Okay, so what we'd like to do before we conclude our talk is, first of all, thank you guys for making great apps, and ask you to continue doing so as we continue to invest in app discovery to grow your business. And together we can create a fair and competitive ecosystem. We'd like to thank you for attending the talk and hope you're enjoying the conference. Next, we're going to take some questions. So if you have any questions, please use the Unite app, and let's go over these. Thank you.
All right, let's go into some of the questions. First question. My app is ranked low in these search results. What do I do?
How unexpected. No, but seriously, the main point of this talk is to really show you what goes into search. The first thing I would ask, obviously I cannot answer any specifics because we need to have more details. But the question is always, well, ranked lower for which search term? Now, taking the search terms into consideration, well, you know that your listing is the main input to our algorithm. So once again, making sure that the listing is accurate is going to be very helpful. In addition to that, again, we do use metadata such as installation history and reviews. So again, maintaining the reviews, positive reviews, and growing your business organically will help you go up in the ranking.
Great. All right, let's switch it up a little bit. This question is, what is the evaluation metric for your algorithm A/B test? So the thing that we optimize for all of the recommendations that we surface currently is the conversion rate to install. That's kind of the golden metric. So whenever we're A/B testing new algorithms and new approaches to the recommendations, we leverage this as kind of the North Star. Although we're currently exploring different, more deeper funnel kind of information, and that will be coming soon later.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, by the way, great question. So, whenever we talk about installs, we talk about installs. We actually don't count apps that have been uninstalled. So it's always real installs surviving.
All right. How many of the monthly searches are brand specific, and how many are general concept searches?
Once again, great question. So actually, we look at roughly, it changes obviously, but it's actually pretty much 50-50. So a huge portion of our searches are actually branded. The reason why I can't really say an exact accurate number, because there's that little group in between which we sometimes refer to as branded, non-branded, which are brand names that are used as a general concept. But generally, a very large part of the search uses brands.
Cool. All right, switching this up to recommendations. How can we influence what recommendations our apps appear for? Interesting question. So currently, we leverage, like we kind of described in the slides, we take in a bunch of attributes from our merchants, and then the algorithm kind of automatically generate the output. And the output recommendations get surfaced to the merchants across the different surfaces. As of now, honestly, I think going back to kind of our takeaways, because we take into the listing information and all of your support and all that kind of data, really just focus on making sure your app is relevant, it is accurate, reflected in your listing, and then we leverage this information to make sure that your apps get discovered across the board. All right. Have you considered or experimented with Google Search API for handling the app search?
Google Search API for handling search. Actually, well, we haven't experimented with it. Have we considered it? Well, no, not really, not yet. I'm kind of wondering, so if the person who asked it, well, what exactly did you have in mind? Yeah.
Yeah, so basically you can plug in your data and your model, and then they can do this for you.
So get Google to search for us. Well, I mean, sure, that would be nice, but there is another aspect that it might be a nice solution in the short run, but I can see where it would actually not be great in the long run, because what we can do is actually contextualize the experience of search. So, which is something we can't really ask Google to do for us unless we give them merchant data, which is not something we would like to do. So yeah, we would definitely like to be able to incrementally improve our search and not outsource it.
Great. How do you measure whether a result was relevant or not?
Great question. So in the slides here, we actually tried to, we couldn't go into all the details, because obviously we only have 20 minutes. And we talked about these two metrics, precision and recall. We actually go a little bit deeper. So we use a metric, for those of you who are interested, we use a metric called discounted then normalized cumulative gain. So the name is very long and complicated, but it's actually a fairly simple metric. So it's a metric that actually allows us to not just look at the quality of lookup, it actually looks at the ranking. So it puts weight on where an app appears in the ranking. Our internal systems, actually we collect collecting evaluations from Shopify employees. We evaluate the relevance of apps to a search term in a mechanical Turk style. And then when I mentioned our internal tools that run thousands of searches, we do that to essentially zoom in on areas that search might not be performing as well.
Great. Awesome. Okay, I see a bunch of questions related to blogs. Which blogs? Do you refer to Shopify blog posts? For the recommendation based on blogs, is that only based on Shopify blog? So yes, to the two second questions, we only use Shopify blog. So when we talk about the merchant signals that we capture, it's specifically only on Shopify domains. And for the recommendations based on blogs, it is currently strictly based on the merchant's view of the Shopify blog posts. And then we leverage that additional data and kind of re-rank and leverage that into our recommendation engine. We are looking into other types of signals currently, but that will be coming soon later. All right. How do you measure positive reviews and quality support?
Okay, so in terms of reviews, we look at the same reviews that you look at on the App Store website, but we do apply some sort of a recency factor. So more recent reviews count more than old reviews. So if you think about it intuitively, as you provide your service, as you grow your business, you kind of get to know your customers better, you provide better service. We take that into account, we see improvement, that gives us a stronger signal. The other part was about quality support. So currently we're not actively using it directly in the search algorithm, but it will be coming soon. And the reason we chose to mention it is that any sort of signal that we use, we can always use it historically. So we look at historical data when we generate it, and we usually experiment with it a little bit to make sure that, again, we're not introducing sort of weird trade-offs. We're not improving one thing and making another area sort of completely messed up. So yeah, that's in terms of support, it's not directly impacting results at the moment.
Yeah, and there's like a few more questions on like how do you measure customer service? How exactly do you measure support? I'm just going to add on top of that.
Yeah.
So we do look at the response rate from merchants whenever there's a support request that's submitted through either the App Store or admin. So that's a very specific signal that we are planning to look at, if that kind of answer some of the questions, how exactly we use it. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit. Okay, you talked a lot about specific search mechanisms like phrase matching, typos. How do we leverage this, or we can't do anything about it?
So it's not really for you guys to leverage. These are actually, the point was to really kind of give you an insight into what we do, why the problem is interesting. It's also a chance for me to geek out about the stuff that I work on. Well, let's be honest, I like it. But it really is to give you a sense of how search works. It's not, there's no magic there. There's no hard-coded values. There really is search engines work a certain way. We use all the state-of-the-art tools that exist, and there's a constant process of carefully tuning it and making sure that essentially avoiding making a small improvement in one area and then kind of discovering that a different area is completely doesn't make sense anymore.
Cool. Kind of a follow-up question to an earlier question. Is retention an important factor in search relevance and also recommendations? Retention, app retention?
So I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yeah, so I think what you're talking about is you want to know whether, like, how long the merchants are using the data, the apps, whether we use that as a signal in generating search results or recommendations. The answer currently is we don't, but this is something we're actually actively looking to understand and measure.
Yeah, these are all actually excellent questions. And another thing just to add here, that when we talk about measuring more signals, there is another aspect here that apps are very different in nature. So they do very different things. I mean, if you think of some apps dealing with the full logistics of shipping products, while some other apps would provide more of a store design widgets. So actually computing these signals in a unified way is quite challenging, and we want to make sure we're doing it in a fair way. So what do you think? I'm not sure we have time for any more questions, but we're going to be around
outside.
here. So
If you have more questions, please come and talk to us.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.